Hello everyone, welcome to Study Vibes with Ash. So this is the video on MPSE-01 India and the World. थोड़ी सी लेट हुई इस बार क्योंकि कुछ टेक्निकल रीजंस की वजह से जो मैंने पहले रिकॉर्ड की थी वो सारी वीडियोस it got deleted. So this is the fourth or fifth time I'm doing the same. Hope you understand. आगे से I'll try to be on time. So thanks to everybody who has supported me और आगे भी please keep supporting. मैं और भी बेहतर बनाने की कोशिश करूँगी. So let's proceed. MPSE-01 India and the World. तो उसमें पहला जो चीज़ है वो है determinants, approaches and India's worldview. So the first one is determinants of India's foreign policy. First, geographical location, right? So India is situated between West Asia, Central Asia, Southeast Asia and Indian Ocean. So that impacts our policy relations like Indian Ocean Rim Association. That is because we are situated in the Indian Ocean. So that does sort of impact. Then historical legacy, like our colonial experiences and freedom struggle, all of them sort of, have made us aware of things like sovereignty, anti-imperialism, which is why जब Africa decolonization कर रही थी, then India was one of the major forces that supported her. Political system and leadership, which is very open and publicly accountable because we are a democracy. For example, Nehru promoted non-alignment, Vajpayee government, they strengthened the nuclear doctrine. Modi government always went about neighborhood engagement and global visibility. So, our leaders also, they're also interested in foreign policies. Then economic priorities. We have trade partnerships, investments, technology access and energy security. For example, our actors policy is a part of what? To channel ASEAN's markets. So we'll get a direct entry into what? Southeast Asia. Then security concerns, especially threats from Pakistan and China, then terrorism, border disputes. The best example for that is Afghanistan ke saath jo relation hai. So that is also being put in doubts because of Pakistan-backed terror groups. Then military capability. So we have both conventional and nuclear abilities. So in 1998, our nuclear test that sort of strengthened our negotiating power. Then cultural and civilizational factors like our soft power tools like diaspora, yoga, Buddhism, cinema, like Bollywood. So cultural diplomacy is a major role, especially between India, Nepal and India-Sri Lanka relations, or even right now with other nations also. Global power shifts, the multipolarity as well as rise of China has forced India to maintain her powers. Like India is participating in Quad because we are concerned about China's dominance in Indo-Pacific. The string of pearls, all of that. International institutions, membership in the UN, WTO, IMF, G20, wherein we are key players in all of these things, especially our International Solar Alliance. Indian diaspora, around 30 million Indians are living abroad and they sort of strengthen our bilateral ties. Right, so what all can we say? We can talk about historical things, our geographical position, political system and leadership, then economic priorities, security concerns, military capabilities, then cultural and civilizational factors, global power shifts, that is the rise of China, then international institutions, then Indian diaspora. Now, what are the approaches to studying India's foreign policy? Okay. First one is the realist perspective. As we already know, realist matlab they focus on what? Power as well as security concerns. So, power-seeking actors are the ones who operate in this world. So, India's aim is also what? Territorial integrity and security. So, we want to strengthen our maritime capacity. So, we have joined Quad as well as, to counter China. Strategic autonomy lens. We are not aligning with any major power just so that, we can maintain our independence. Then liberal or interdependence approach. What does liberal approach say? We are all about cooperation in economic, international and mutual dependence like India-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement. Constructivist perspective is all about our identity, values and norms that shape national behavior, which is how India emphasizes on democracy and anti-colonial solidarity. Then divergent viewpoints within India. Like realists argue that India must align with the powerful to counter threats. Traditionalists prefer non-alignment and autonomy, while economic pragmatists push for what? A trade-oriented diplomacy. So the best example for that is RCEP debate, whether we should join or not. Even though we have not joined, there are, supporters who say that we should. So role of domestic politics, coalition governments, public opinion, political ideology, pressure groups, all of them impact our foreign choices. So political consensus helped strengthen India-US ties during nuclear deal. Role of external environment, like if there is a global danger of Cold War, unipolarity, rise of China, all of these things will influence our foreign policy. Like our Indo-Pacific policy was because of this shift in power relations. We realized that if we do not counter China, then we'll be having an enemy from Indo-Pacific side also. Evolution of India's worldview. So post-independence period, that is from 47 to 62, we were basically based on what idealism, peaceful coexistence and anti-colonialism, which is what we saw in Panchsheel, which we tried with China as well as other nations. After 62, we shifted to realism because we understood that okay, even if we are अगर हम अच्छे भी हैं तो भी सामने से attacks हो सकते हैं, especially the defeat in Sino-Indian War. So that meant we had to strengthen our defense and pragmatic diplomacy. That is why we got closer to Soviet Union. Then Indira Gandhi era. So she pursued power politics as well as regional leadership, like how she intervened in Bangladesh liberation. Post-liberalization, economic diplomacy became important because LPG rules were introduced and market was opened up. Best example for that is Look East policy. Then post-Cold War pragmatism, we try to diversify our partnership so that we'll not be left alone. जब दो nation जरा कर रहे हैं तो हम उन पे dependent ना हो, which is why we strengthened our ties with all the same time with US, Russia, China, or जो भी whoever was willing. Rice is a global actor, so we want to be a major partner in global governance and climate initiatives, which is why we took on G20 presidency, International Solar Alliance, all of that. Now, contemporary worldview. India wants strategic autonomy, regional stability, global leadership, economic modernization, and a strong diasporic ties. और ये सारी चीज़ें जो है, these are very basic. Every nation wants these same things. Next one is non-alignment and Nehruvian consensus. So what is the core idea of non-alignment? That we should maintain autonomy. ये कब हुई थी? During Cold War. Neither did we join NATO nor the Warsaw Pact. That is Russia nor US. We said we are a sovereign nation. हम अकेले रहना चाहते हैं. So what was the principles under Nehruvian consensus? Peaceful coexistence, anti-colonial solidarity, support for UN, disarmament and moral diplomacy, and strategic autonomy. So what was the reason for this policy? Because we were quite new to independence and neither did we have the finance nor did we have the military. तो सबसे judicious चीज़ ये थी या sensible चीज़ ये थी कि हम अपना देखें. And which is why we also supported during the Indo-Korean War and all, we tried to go into mediation rather than a downright attack. Now, evolution of non-alignment. After Cold War, non-alignment has become multi-alignment, which is why we have joined Quad with US and Japan, but at the same time we import arms from Russia. So we are aligning with whichever partners. It's not just restricted to or not joining, right? Strengths of the policy, it preserves the sovereignty, it builds global credibility and allowed balanced relations because it showed that okay, this nation will not take anything unjust. They're being the gentlemen in the room. Especially leaders of non-alignment movement, they were impressed with India's role and therefore India's relations, especially her soft power, also increased. What were the criticism? It is quite idealistic. Like it's not possible to not pick sides. Like you will have to align at some point. Accused of leaning towards USSR, that was another criticism. Then even though we were non-aligned and we were being the nice guy in the room, we still had to face a war with China. So what is the relevance? It gives us strategic autonomy because it is flexible and so we can create interest-based partnership, which is why we took a neutral stance during Russia-Ukraine conflict. क्यों? क्योंकि Russia is one of our major partners. तो इसीलिए हमने सोचा कि okay, war is wrong, but at the same time we chose to stay out. And because we have a legacy of non-alignment, it was done and we were dependent on Russia for a lot of things. Okay? So now second theme is institutions and policy actors. So the first one is Ministry of External Affairs. what is their structure and role. So that is the central institution for diplomacy. MEA is a primary body that formulates, executes and monitors India's foreign policy. Like MEA is what coordinates India's participation in UN General Assembly every year. Now what is the administrative structure? There is an external affairs minister, then there are ministers of state, there is a foreign secretary and then multiple territorial and functional divisions. So these divisions are like Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, America, Europe, etc. So then embassies and missions abroad. So there are around 195 embassies, consulates and missions world over. For example, the Indian embassy in Washington deals with political, defense and diaspora relations. Then policy formulation. Ministry of External Affairs drafts policy notes, briefs and long-term strategies based on geopolitical trends. So India's Indo-Pacific strategy came through MEA's internal policy groups. So they are the ones who sort of decide on what policy India is going to follow internationally. Diplomatic negotiations, like negotiations on trade, defense, climate, nuclear or multilateral issues, that is also handled by MEA. Like India's nuclear civil agreement with US involved their negotiations. Now consular and diaspora services. There are also passport services, then citizen issues abroad, also connects with diaspora like Madad portal, that is for Indians in distress overseas. International agreements, MEA drafts and finalizes treaties and memoranda, ensures that legal compliance is met with, like India, Japan logistic support, coordination with other ministries, like for external matters, there will be coordinations with defense, commerce, environment or home affairs ministry. Like climate diplomacy includes MEA plus environment ministry obviously at COPs. Then public diplomacy and soft power, we use cultural ties, education and messaging etc. Like International Yoga Day that came about because MEA pushed for it. Crisis management overseas, there are evacuations or emergencies or geopolitical risks like Operation Rahat which was done in Yemen. That rescue operation was also led by MEA. Now Prime Minister's office, what is its role in foreign policy? It is a centralized decision making because we have a very strong executive system. Like India-US civil nuclear deal was driven personally by PMO. Strategic coordination, again, it also synchronizes defense, intelligence, MPA inputs and cabinet decisions like Doklam crisis. It was a multilateral decision or multi-ministry decision where PMO was at the head. Role of National Security Advisor. So NSA functions under PMO and influences key strategic decisions. Example, India-China border talks are always led by NSA. High-level diplomacy, especially summits or bilateral visits, that is handled by PM-led groupings. So like Vladimir Narendra summits or when Howdy Modi and all. So their PMO is the leading factor. Crisis response system, obviously evacuation, security response, all of that. Operation Ganga, which was for Ukraine evacuation. Interministerial coordination, obviously since PMO is the executive organization, defense, commerce, home, MEA, all of them will be combined. Like trade negotiations, policy innovations, they come from a PMO centric vision like neighborhood first, activist policy. All of these are PMO driven strategic shifts, which is why when the government changes, there is also a shift in the policy. Public messaging and diplomacy, that sort of boosts our global image, like diaspora events in US and UK. Influence on appointments, the senior diplomatic appointments, that is also PMO strategic priorities, like the ambassadors sent to Washington, Beijing, all of them, especially key ambassadors, that is cleared by PMO. Long-term strategic planning, like vision documents, like let's say India Indo-Pacific strategy or Global South leadership, these are all formulated by PMO. National Security Council, NSC, that is the Central Security Advisory Body. So it is NSC that advises PM on national security issues. It includes PM, National Security Advisor, Defense Minister, Home Minister, External Affairs Minister and relevant experts. So it has many subcommittees to handle cybersecurity, intelligence, strategic planning, etc. Now what is the role of NSA? So he shapes the military, diplomatic and intelligence policy. Like they sort of handle the back channel diplomacy, especially during Indo-China standoffs. Strategic planning functions, like their job is long-term national security strategies, defense modernization, and geopolitics. Like India's nuclear doctrine was reviewed under NSC guidance. Crisis management, NSC coordinates during terrorist attacks, border clashes, or global crisis. Like post 2611, reforms were routed through NSC structures, just so that we can counter further or any future such altercations. Intelligence coordination from raw, IB, military intelligence, all of that. Like the Balakot airstrike planning, it was coordinated. Policy review, it evaluates defense preparedness, border security, and national threats. Now, technology and cyber defense, overseas cybersecurity architecture and emerging tech risks, global strategic dialogue. NSC engages with foreign counterparts for security cooperation like India-US Homeland Security dialogues. Then it strengthens the national power because it aligns our military, economic, and diplomatic tools for national interests. Okay. So next question is role of political parties in foreign policy, ideological influence, be it nationalist, socialist, or liberal orientations. Parliamentary debates, because many of our decisions are taken through not many, everything is through legislative consensus. So like India-US nuclear deal, there were strong parliamentary debates on it. Coalition era impact, regional parties affected during that time because like Tamil Nadu influencing India-Sri Lanka policy. Election manifestos, they do appear as part of the election manifesto. Pressure on executive, because it is these political parties that sort of pressurize, and then that affects the diplomatic choices. State level interest will also be there. Like West Bengal stands on Teesta agreement because it is, it includes their areas as well as their water sharing aspects. Opposition role, again, just like the general rule, they should check on the executive decisions. Public mobilization, obviously political parties are more rooted or connected to ordinary people, so logo ko, they'll try to bring them together and bring about a counter or support, whatever. Foreign engagements, like party delegations will be sent to foreign countries for political diplomacy, like we did after the conflict with Pakistan. Continuity and change, that strategic continuity remains due to the political parties. The ideologies may change of the government, but party ideologies will influence the long-term shifts. Now, NGOs, think tanks, and social movements, basically civil societies. So they are the track to diplomacy. Track 1 is what? MEA, PMO, or NSA, all of them. So track 2 is the experts or NGOs who actually engage in unofficial dialogues. So they are the ones who do policy research, like Vivekananda Foundations, IDSA, ORF. They all draft strategic documents, and they give, because they are experts, they might have newer theories or ideas to tackle certain situations better. Human rights advocacy, obviously. Environmental campaigns, it is NGOs that obviously influence India's stance at conference or party summits. Development partnerships, crisis relief operations, especially for example in Nepal after 2015 earthquake, it was Indian NGOs that sort of assisted. Then public opinion formation, like think tanks publish studies which shape the foreign policy debates. Then knowledge exchange, like global conferences which connect Indian experts with world leaders. Diaspora networks, like the NGOs which are abroad or vice versa, they can improve India's image, right? Peace movements, obviously, they advocate for the humanitarian aspect mainly. The next one is role of media in foreign policy. First, agenda setting. Obviously, they can sort of make the government focus on what is important. Shaping public opinion. Like the narratives on China, that did impact our knowledge, right? Because we do not know, which is why government came and briefed in between during the Pakistan-India attacks. Crisis reporting, diplomatic signaling, because statements in media will impact the whole diplomatic message that a nation is trying to put forward. Transparency mechanism, because government will not come and tell us everything, right? They are informing us the major issues, because right now there is a threat of fake news as well. But now it is a job of the media to come forward and tell us. Soft power promotion, they showcases culture, tourism, and economic opportunities abroad. Digital diplomacy, right now social media, like MES Twitter handle a lot of diplomatic issues. Critique and accountability. International law, cooperation, then shaping crisis narratives, like the coverages during Uri, Pulwama or Doklam, all of that affected our understandings as well as our feelings. If they had done a negative representation or reporting, then we'll be also be scared. But they gave a very positive and secured approach, so citizens were also quite happy. Then parliamentary committees. So there they have the oversight role, as in they are supposed to scrutinize everything. Committee on External Affairs, they reviews MEA's functioning, budgets, diplomatic initiatives. Defense and Security Committees, they are supposed to examine military cooperation and strategy issues. Report preparation, then expert consultations will be done, wherein you can even call them for hearings. Policy recommendations, budget oversight, like how much money is being spent. Accountability mechanism, like you can pull up the ministries for certain questions if you have any doubts. Transparency, as in what have you actually done in the name of foreign policy, and that will bring about transparency for people also. Then bipartisan consensus, so there will be multiple party agreements on decisions or issues rather than quite unilateral. Then nuclear policy, disarmament and security issues, that's three. So उस पे पहला क्वेश्चन है India's nuclear policy. So what is the historical background? In 1948, under Homi Bhabha, that's when India started its nuclear journey. So there the initial idea was for what? Peaceful purposes, and the first nuclear test was Smiling Buddha. So with Smiling Buddha in 1974, 1948 they sort of laid the foundation. 74 was the first time we did a nuclear test, and with that we entered the nuclear club. Peaceful nuclear explosions doctrine, which is what even Nehru's as well as Gandhi's idea. That is, it was a combination of Nehru's scientific temper and Gandhian restraint. Now, why did we go for opting this nuclear policy first? China was already using nuclear facilities in 1964. So there is a question of national security. Then to deter Pakistan against nuclear programs, as well as to assert our strategic autonomy. Then Pokhran 2, which was in 1998, wherein we established 5 underground test areas. So that again gave us an image of a nuclear weapon state, and that showed India's capability. But at the same time, we said that we will not do any first use. That is, unless and until you will not attack us, we will not attack you. Nuclear doctrine, which is credible minimum deterrence, no first use principle, massive retaliation. But if somebody attacks us, तो हम बैठे नहीं रहेंगे, we'll attack massively. Civilian political control will be preferred over nuclear forces. Now, institutional structure, there is an SFC, Strategic Forces Command, and Nuclear Command Authority, NCA. Then civil nuclear energy policy. So India uses nuclear power for sustainable energy works as well. So it is not merely military, but we use it for civilian purpose as well. Like India-US civil nuclear deal in 2008, where the aim was for uranium imports and global cooperation. Then global engagement. India joined the export control regimes like MTCR was in our agreement, because we also showed that okay, we are a nuclear state, but we are willing to go by the law. Now, balancing deterrence and disarmament. So India supports disarmament universally, but at the same time the deterrence capacity should also be maintained. You cannot say that India should lose all our nuclear powers, then we will be susceptible to attack. So what is the importance of this nuclear policy? It gives a strategic stability as well as international recognition and domestic energy benefits. Now, what is India's disarmament policy or initiatives? Firstly, there is a foundational belief that we have, that is of non-violence by Gandhi, and Nehru also. He was very scientific, but at the same time he also wanted peace. So what were the early initiatives? In 54, Nehru proposed a standstill agreement on nuclear testing. 57, he said that okay, we'll halt the nuclear weapons production. Then in 68, when UN passed UN disarmament resolution, India did support all of that. But India rejected NPT versus non-weapon division. Why? Because there are a lot of nations, like especially the developed nations, who possess nuclear weapons. So now you're saying that we cannot even use nuclear energy for develop, or we cannot even develop it. That is not fair. So we argue for an equality. Then CTBT, Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, we said we'll not sign it. Why? Because it is again unequal. And you are asking the newly developing states to be more accountable than the earlier ones. Then Rajiv Gandhi Action Plan. He proposed a step-by-step global disarmament within a specific time frame. And that was appreciated at UN, but obviously we did not implement it. Now, advocacy for nuclear-free world, which is what we want. Balancing idealism and realism. So, deterrence is also important along with disarmament. Multilateral factors. So, we support conferences or no first use norms, but at the same time, we'll also protect our sovereignty. Now, what is the current policy? Global zero, but insists that first it should be the major powers that will have to disarm. If they do it, then we'll also do it. Now, what is India's position on NPT? So, what is the background? NPT came into force in 1970. The idea was to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons. Now, why did India not sign it? Because it said that you are making a nuclear inequality between the 5 nuclear powers and us, because जो powerful nations है, they have already developed the nuclear powers capabilities, and now you are saying that we are not supposed to develop, so we are not at an equal standing, और आप ये expect कर रहे हो that we will do better than them. First, या तो वो पूरे के पूरे एनर्जी को नष्ट करे या हमें उतना टाइम दे ताकि हम उनसे बराबरी कर सकें. Now, core objections: permanent division between nuclear and non-nuclear states, no clear disarmament commitment from weapon states, and violation of sovereign equality, like you're putting it unequal for both the groups. Moral and strategic argument: India is against proliferation but wanted a global disarmament. After 1974, what happened was, whatever nuclear tests India did, there were sanctions. But whenever that sanctions came, there was a discussion that you ought to have fair disarmament mechanisms. After 98 tests, India again said that we'll only use nuclear energy responsibly. And in fact, we came with voluntary moratorium on testing and NFU policy. Then de facto recognition. India gained access to civil nuclear cooperation. Even though we are outside of NPT, हमें वो मिला because we proved, okay, we'll not use it for any kind of disastrous or terrorist activities like the 2008 India-US nuclear deal and NSG waiver that we got. What is the current position? So we support universal disarmament and we are okay to joining NPT as a nuclear weapon state. If at all you want us, we'll not be the other one. And it rejects the global non-proliferation norms because it's tilted towards again the weapon states as well as the non-nuclear states are at a disadvantage. Now, what is the significance? It reflects the balance between moral stance and strategic interest. Now, it is also an example of responsible behavior. Why? Because India has not done anything wrong with the nuclear capacity that she possesses. So, we have strong export controls, we are committed to the safety standards and we are not doing any proliferation. Now, Pokhran 2 nuclear tests in 98. So, it was under Vajpayee and the test marked a turning point in India's strategic posture. What was the objective? To demonstrate a credible nuclear deterrence, to reinforce national security against regional threats, and then to assert strategic autonomy. So, what was the nature of tests? There were 5 underground detonation at Pokhran, Rajasthan, and it included fission and thermonuclear devices. What was the domestic reaction? There was a sense of pride because nuclear tests are also very scientifically advanced, especially 98 and all. So, India and the way in which we did, so that showed that we are a responsible nuclear power. Then international reactions, obviously they did not like it, especially US, Japan and others. So, there were initial sanctions, but when they saw that okay, India is acting responsibly, they sort of went into normalcy. Policy declaration, we said we'll do no first use and credible minimum deterrence. Strategic outcomes, obviously we got a greater security posture, especially with China and Pakistan. Diplomatic outcomes, there was an India-US civil nuclear agreement. Then what was the technological implications? That boosted our indigenous scientific and defense capabilities. And what was the long-term significance? It marked India's transition from moral nuclear restraint to pragmatic deterrence. So that again strengthened our global status. Okay, next one is international or global terrorism and India's response. So what was the nature of the threat? So firstly, there was cross-border terrorism, cyber threats and radicalization. All of these things affect India's security. Now, which is a major power that is targeting India, that is Pakistan, especially the Mumbai 2611 or Pulwama attacks in 2019, all of that. Then domestic policy response. So we worked on our intelligence coordination. NIA, National Investigation Agency, came up in 2008. Counter radicalization initiatives that we have taken up. The military response. There were surgical strikes as well as the Balakot air strikes. All of them show our proactive defense posture. Then international cooperation. India has partnered with US, EU and ASEAN on counter-terrorism agreements like India-US Homeland Security Dialogues, UN engagement, wherein we have repeatedly demanded for a international terrorism, Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism, that is CCIT. That is something that we have been asking. Then regional cooperation like SARC, BIMSTEC or SCO. For all of them, we work together for intelligence sharing and capacity building as well as to protect the respective security concerns. Then financial controls, active participation in Financial Action Task Force to curb terror financing. Then diplomatic offensive, like we push to isolate the sponsors of terrorism. Like the reason why many of the Pakistan-based groups have been listed as global terrorist organizations is because of India's lobbying. Now, what are the future challenges? Right now, it's cyber terrorism, drone warfare, then lone wolf attacks. Because it's not easy, like what happened in Kashmir and all. Okay, next one is theme 4, that is India and the major power relations. Basically, I'm focusing on US, Russia, China, Japan and EU. So first one is India-US relations. So that we can begin from post-Cold War to present. So in that, initially we were estranged, like we were under NAM, so we did not join them. Then we started engaging in 1990s. So ideological differences were reduced and economic liberalization brought India closer to US, like the 1991 reforms that enabled technology and defense cooperation between both the nations. Then strategic convergence. Like we have common concerns over what China, terrorism and Indo-Pacific security, all of these strengthened our alignment. Then India-US nuclear deal. That was another major thing that allowed us for civil nuclear trade. Especially in 2008, India received an NSG waiver from US. So right now the focus is USG. इसी तरह हर nation के साथ, there are separate points. Then defense partnership. So it is a strategic partner in defense like Lemova, Comcasa, Becca, जो हमने sign की है अभी. All of these things. Then counter-terrorism cooperation like intelligence sharing or homeland security dialogue, especially after 2611 attacks. Economic and trade relations. One of the major trading partners and technology investor, like many of them like Apple, Google, Amazon, all of them have expanded their operations. In fact, Apple has a branch in India as well. The Indian diaspora influence, around 4.5 million Indian Americans are there. Then Indo-Pacific collaboration through Quad as well as Malabar naval exercise. Then areas of friction, where do we keep on having conflicts? One is trade disputes. Then differences on Russia and Iran, like we have a different take, they have a different take. Then visa restrictions, obviously, especially with Trump administration. I hope you know what GSP is. That is generalized system of preferences जो US देती थी इंडिया को, लेकिन that has been taken away. Again, there are many such trade disputes. So what is the current trajectory? It is now a comprehensive global strategic partnership wherein we have increased our cooperation in semiconductors, defense co-production, AI and supply chain security. Then it's India-Russia. So again, there is a historical legacy to it. Our Cold War ties that continued till post-1991, even though there were many changes. Defense cooperation, especially one of a major military supplier. BrahMos missile projects, S-400 air defense, all of these are examples for it. Then strategic dialogue. There is an annual India-Russia summits. Then nuclear energy collaboration like the Kudankulam 1 reactor in Tamil Nadu, that is under Russia. Then energy and hydrocarbons. We've invested in Russian oil fields like Sakhalin 1. In fact, after Ukraine conflict, we have increased our discounted oil imports. So we depended on Russia for our energy and oil as well, all of these things. Then space cooperation, like we trained Gaganyaan astronauts and as well as our early space programs, especially all of that. Then geopolitical coordination like engagements in BRICS, SCO or G20. Like Russia is our ally till now, which is why Putin keeps coming to India. Areas of divergence is Russia-China closeness and Russia-Pakistan ties, जो कि हमें उतना अच्छा नहीं लग रहा. Then post-Ukraine war dynamics. We do not want to engage with them, but at the same time it was war. So we did not take any sides. We couldn't take any sides क्योंकि we depended on Russia for energy, but we did condemn the civilian deaths. What is the current status? So India is trying to diversify her dependence क्योंकि अगर because Russia is also growing her dependence to other nations. So just for that, the India-China relations and border dispute, historical disputes, which is from line of actual control, especially in Aksai Chin and Arunachal Pradesh, right? So the 62 war. So that led to a long-term mistrust. Now we don't trust China at all. Then confidence building measures, there are multiple of them like 93, 96, 2005. All of these like measures were done so that we can build trust or at least reduce the tensions, but the boundary issue has still continued. Economic interdependence. China is India's largest import partner for electronics, machineries or APIs. What do you mean by APIs? Active pharmaceutical ingredients. Strategic rivalry, of course. हम दोनों we are in the same region, so we are competing in South Asia, Indian Ocean, Indo-Pacific and all. Doklam crisis in 2017, which sort of highlighted India's role in Bhutan and China's assertiveness. Then Galvan clash. That was the first deadly clash since 1975. That again deteriorated our relations. And what is India's response to all of these things? First is military build-up. We started spending or focusing more on our military. Then banning 200 plus Chinese apps. Then tightening the investment scrutiny. Reducing Chinese influence in our markets. Diplomatic engagements, obviously. What is the current trend? So there is a cooperation and competition element, but it is the distrust between both of us. Then India-Japan relations. So after Cold War, there was a transformation of ties. In the 2000s, there was an increase in relation, especially when before that in 90s there was a stagnation because of the Pokhran test results. Then economic partnership, it is a major investor like a Delhi Metro, Mumbai Ahmedabad bullet train, all of that are sponsored by Japan. Then trade and technology, we collaborate in manufacturing, digital technology and semiconductors. Then there is a strategic convergence in Indo-Pacific because we are also concerned about China because India and Japan are closer to China. Defense cooperation, Malabar exercise, military logistics pact. Then we have a civil nuclear cooperation. Then infrastructure developments, many connectivity projects in Northeast are supported by Japan. Our Quad partnership. Quad includes which all nation? US, Australia, Japan and India. We have a very strong cultural linkage like Buddhism, anime, educational exchanges, all of that. What is the current trend? So it is one of India's closest global partnerships. Then India-EU relations. EU, European Union. There is an economic importance because EU is one of India's largest trading blocs as well as investment sources. Then there is a strategic partnership. Obviously, like we have structured dialogues with EU. Then trade negotiations are there. There are many FTA negotiations that are ongoing so that we can enhance our trade. Technology and standards cooperation, like we collaborate on data protection, GDPR alignment. GDPR is actually used General Data Protection Regulation. So that is part of their law. उससे हम align करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. Then Climate and Sustainability Corporation, especially our renewable energy initiatives, International Solar Alliance was supported, and Security Cooperation on counterterrorism, cybersecurity, connectivity partnership in infrastructures in Africa or Indo-Pacific, human rights differences, that's a point of contest because the Kashmir issue, EU took a different stance. Then Brexit impact. So that led India to have, now we have separate ties with UK and EU. What is the current status? Right now it's strong, and there, because we have a shared democratic values as well as economic aim for greater growth, we are actually quite good with EU. Okay, so I think this is enough for part 1, or jaldi, like within half an hour or so I'll be uploading part 2. Take care. So thank you for watching everyone. Please subscribe, like, share and comment. आई नो थोड़ी लेट हो गई, बट आगे से आई ट्राई टू मेक इट ऑन टाइम. एंड इफ़ यू वांट एनी स्पेसिफिक पेपर्स डू मेंशन इन कमेंट. अगर हो सकती है तो मैं ज़रूर बनाऊंगी. जैसे कि मैंने कहा, टाइम कंस्ट्रेंट्स होती है, बट प्लीज़ टू अंडरस्टैंड, ओके, ये इतना ईजी नहीं है टू प्रिपेयर आंसर्स in this format for every paper. But thank you for watching. Do like, share and subscribe.